Hi, it's Lee. I'm back with another video. We're going to talk again today about half square triangle units. In my previous video, we talked about how to make half square triangle units using my perfect HST templates. It's a method for making half square triangle units that are super accurate and easy to do and quick. Half square triangle units, they're everywhere in quilting. You're going to use them all the time when you're piecing, so it's really important to be able to do these units well. And actually making the half square triangle units is really only the first part of the equation. The second part of the equation is taking those units when you're done and accurately sewing them together into a finished block. And that can be as tricky as making the units themselves. Obviously, if you start with a really well-made, accurate half square triangle unit, it's going to be easier to sew them together into a nice looking finished product. But it still can be tricky even if you're starting with something that's really well made. So today I'm going to show you how I personally sew together half square triangle units really accurately so that the seams all line up and the points all come together and it all looks perfect. So that's what we'll work on today. Okay, so here are the half square triangle units that I am sewing together today. These are it. These are 2-inch unfinished half square triangle units that I made using my perfect half square triangle templates. So they're nice and accurate to start with, which is always a good beginning when you're trying to sew together half square triangle units. So I am sewing them together just like this today. And first of all, let's turn these over. So when I make half square triangle units, I always like to press seams open. Now, I know that that's totally personal preference. A lot of people really prefer to press seams to the side for various reasons. I like mine open just because I think it makes everything more accurate. That little fold when you press seams to the side can throw it off just a tiny little bit. So when you press seams open, the units are nice and flat and totally accurate when you sew them together. So that's my reasoning for pressing seams open, but really it's personal preference. I'm not saying you need to do it one way or the other, but I'll show you that it also makes it easier to see what you're doing when you're sewing them together later on. So in this case, we're sewing this together like this. So really all I would do is put them together, right sides together, line them up as best you can, really nice and accurately. And then if we're sewing a seam right along here, what I do is just fold this back to the 1/4 inch mark where the seam will be. And just make sure those, hopefully you can see this, just make sure that those diagonal seams are nicely lined up. Just eyeball it, kind of scooch the seams together a little bit. Even when they're pressed open, they can sort of fit together. Make sure right where that seam is going to cut across that those two existing seams are perfectly lined up. And then that's all you need to do. Just hold it just like that. Pin it in place if you want. I don't typically do that, but it kind of depends on the size of the half square triangle. And sew right across. Okay, so here is my stitched together half square triangle units. You can see I just kept an eye on where I was coming across these diagonal seams where I had lined them up. And when you open it up, looks like that, perfection. Now you can also do the same type of technique with 2 sets of half square triangles. So as you continue to add half square triangles to your block, you can continue to kind of follow that same concept as you sew them together. But in this case, what I'm going to do is I'm going to put these together like this and kind of line them up right along this, I line up right along this center vertical seam right there. And then fold this back just like this. Let me hold this up closer here so that you can kind of see where you need those seams to all line up and see that it's really right there together where you want it. So I just kind of fold it back, then fold it in a little to make sure it's all lined up just the way that I want it. And then I'll just put a pin in, let me grab a pin. Put a pin right there where I put them together. I usually go right through the seam allowance, just like that. And then you're ready to sew right across there. And when you sew, you'll want to just have that the seam that you're sewing hit right there at that point where this where my thumbnail is, right there. So here it is, all sewn up. You can see that that seam is hitting that point exactly there. And when we open it, there we go, nice and perfect.